Hello, and welcome to this Module 10 discussion for CMST430. As always, I am the video host you most wish you could have a cup of coffee with, Bill Perkins. Let's get started. Question 1. What types of organizational knowledge is needed to best understand and communicate with their various publics? How do we access that information, and what ways is it best used? Organizations use either public relations or marketing and advertising to communicate with their publics. In both cases, they rely on research to identify the public that they're trying to reach. A large part of that research is learning about their stakeholders, as seen on page 421, both internally and externally. Research, pages 420 through 425, for public relations is done to identify which group within those stakeholders they are trying to communicate with and the internal makeup of that group. Part of that is determining the demographics of the group, such as age, gender, education level, income, ethnicity, and family status. They also collect information about the psychographics of the group, such as political beliefs, religious beliefs, and lifestyle preferences. This information is gathered from letters and emails that the organization has received, comments on its Facebook page, and other social media visits to websites, customer satisfaction surveys, one-on-one interviews, and focus groups. The organization may also engage in SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis, to determine where they currently stand in their communication with their publics. All of this information is used to create public relation messaging about the organization that fosters a co-orientation between the public and the organization. They're seeking to create an alignment between the organization's message with the stakeholders' concerns. There are 4 key points in the co-orientation between the organization and their public: the level of agreement, the levels of understanding, the level of congruency, and the level of accuracy. The research for marketing and advertising, pages 437 through 440, use a few more tools to understand and communicate with their publics beyond the ones we've already discussed. First is copy testing, that tests the visual, oral, and textual elements of an advertisement to see how their targeted group will respond to and remember it. They use technologies such as eye-tracking cameras, tachystoscopes, electronic response indicators, pupillometers, psychological tests, scientific surveys, etc. There are many consumer research firms that they can use to get this information. They also use firms to do market and product research. These look at the demographics and psychographic data about their publics, just as they did with research for public relations. As stated on page 440, they are looking for information about the current attitudes of various consumer categories about an organization's particular product or brand, and whether, as presented in an advertising and marketing campaign, that product or brand can potentially deliver what consumers want or need, and meet or exceed those consumers' expectations. Now, I've never personally been involved in public relations, marketing, or advertising for an organization, but as a consumer, I can say that messaging with a humorous tone, or one that makes fun of the organization, its brand, and its products, is the kind that gets my attention. If you get me to laugh, I will remember your message and probably even share it. Case in point, the Squatty Potty. I have told a lot of people about them because their commercials are hilarious. On to question 2. What are the key similarities and differences between public relations and advertising/marketing? Use and cite the language of the text to explain your response. The biggest difference between public relations and advertising/marketing is the channels/media that are available to them and the control the organization has over how the message is presented. The public relations person must cultivate productive relationships with the gatekeepers of media, such as reporters, journalists, writers, editors, producers, and directors who provide access to media coverage. On page 424, we see what channels are available for public relations. PR is carried by uncontrolled media, sometimes called free media, which the organization does not pay for. Because of this, the organization does not control the content, placement, or frequency of its message. When they send out a press release, they do not even know if the local paper or media will pick it up, whether it will be edited, if the photo they've added it will be printed, and where in the paper or on the website will the information appear. The organization, of course, can control their own website, Facebook page, or even paid advertisements to get out their message. As stated in my answer for the first question, PR is about attaining a co-orientation between the organization and its publics/stakeholders. Marketing and advertising is about branding the organization and selling its products or services. Marketing and advertising is completely under the control of the organization. It is media that has been paid for. There is little to no outside influence on the message or how it is edited or presented, other than coming from the advertising agency they may have hired to create their marketing campaign. For instance, when a company buys an advertisement in the local newspaper, it determines the text and design of the ad, its size, what section of the paper it appears, and how often it runs. And finally, question 3. We live in an age where it is becoming increasingly difficult to differentiate between legitimate information and propaganda, where inconvenient truths are labeled fake news by anyone who doesn't want to believe them. Discuss the difference between the two, how they work and why they work. Use the text to support your response. On pages 442 and 443, under the title A Word of Warning, the authors discuss some of these issues. They note that we are currently in the age of propaganda, where Americans are exposed to billions of print ads, millions of direct mail, websites, radio commercials, billboards, and television commercials. They argue that not all of it is actually propaganda. They define propaganda as messages that encourage choosing without mindful deliberation. That persuasion is thoughtful, while propaganda is mindless. That persuasion encourages deliberation before choosing, and propaganda encourages choosing without deliberation. They further define propaganda techniques such as grand falon, making up a meaningless organization and telling people they belong to it, the norm of reciprocity, giving people something so they feel compelled to give something in return, appeals to fear or guilt, use of slippery or colorful words, citation of doctored statistics or selective facts, and the manufacture of credibility through emotional confessions or celebrity endorsements. But next, what is legitimate information? Legitimate information are facts that are supported by the scientific method and/or documentary evidence. It is information about what is actually occurring and not the interpretations or reactions to it. What is fake news? The term has fallen out of favor as many now find it inadequate to actually define the issue we are facing. Some now call it information pollution, a term created by Claire Wardle and is made up of 3 parts. Misinformation, false information disseminated without harmful intent, such as parodies or satirical stories that unfortunately sometimes get shared innocently and sometimes nefariously as being real. Disinformation, created and shared by people with harmful intent. And malinformation, the sharing of genuine information with the intent to cause harm, such as only sharing part of the genuine information and then adding a false conclusion in order to create anger or distrust in the viewer, or sharing outdated information that is presented as current, or sharing private information in order to defame someone. The reason that information pollution works is due in part to the theories of persuasion on page 429. If we look at Festinger's cognitive dissonance, it contends that people are aversively driven to reconcile contradictory attitudes they may hold. If the information creates a negative feeling but you want to believe it, you'll find a way to do so. Sheriff's social judgment theory holds that people's attitudes are best seen as broad zones of what they can accept or reject. If the information can be skewed towards the limit of your acceptance, you will expand your limit to allow it in. Petty and Cacioppo's elaboration likelihood model suggests people who hear a persuasive message will actually think about the argument if able and motivated to do so, but will jump to conclusion if their attention is drawn to peripherals. If you're given pieces of information that include some that are captivating to your mind or create a strong emotional response, you will jump to a conclusion without actually thinking about all the information you've been given. And finally, we have to look at Heider's attribution theory that says people will create causal explanations for significant events. We are driven to find meaning and understanding and usually rely on the idea of one thing leading to another, though we frequently get this wrong. We then take that wrong belief and tie it to other information in our heads that we believe to be related in what Hans Keplinger called a schema or a frame. Then, according to priming theory, we link those schema frames to other related ones. Once you've created this network of mental associations, you're more sensitive, open to media coverage about those issues or similar ones, and you'll be more likely to seek out such coverage, and more likely to give it careful consideration. In simpler terms, you hear a fake or false piece of information. Because of your own beliefs and ideology, you choose to believe it. It fits in your understanding and makes sense to you personally. You then associate that information in your mind with related information that may or may not also be false, creating a schema or frame. You then link other bits of information, other schemas, to the new one you created, and thus create a network of information in your mind. And this makes you more open to similar information that you will seek out. If you accept false fake information as being true due to either cognitive dissonance, social judgment theory, the elaboration likelihood model, or simply because it fits within your personal frame of beliefs and or ideology, you make yourself more willing to accept further false fake news, which in my opinion goes a long way towards further understanding of the Trump cult followers. Thanks for watching. I've enjoyed reading your responses and viewing your videos this quarter. This is Bill Perkins signing off and wishing you all the very best.